Hey guys, we are the Latter-day Disciples. Our team is dedicated to helping you boldly live the gospel, recognize the signs of the times, and prepare for the return of our Savior, Jesus Christ. We invite you to join us in our mission through our daily and weekly podcast series, connecting with us on social media, and visiting latterdaydisciples.com. We pray you are enlightened and empowered through this podcast episode. Thank you for joining us. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Latter-day Disciples podcast. I'm excited to be joined today by Howard George Stirrup. Howard was born in 1983. That would be crazy. In Stoke on Trent, United Kingdom. He moved to Spain when he was 14 years old and spent most of his adolescence and young adulthood making repetitive mistakes in the infamous sin city, Benidorm. He suffered for a year and a half with a life-threatening parasite infection in the lungs, which caused a new worldview and his effort to try and make up for some of those wrongs. Since 2017, he's been raising awareness of higher dimensions and promoting natural sciences, handing out flyers and inspiring theism in Spain, Portugal, Gibraltar, U.S.A, Egypt, Burma, India, Thailand, Cambodia, Scotland, and different parts of England, including Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park, London. He met Mike Wilkerson, who promotes the open source investigation known as BIO-GEOLOGY, which supports the idea of a worldwide flood, such as in the type of Noah's Ark. He met a genius who has been divinely inspired with different mathematical proofs that demonstrate intelligent design. Howard has also produced lots of educational video content on media platforms like YouTube, BitChute, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Rumble, under the name of Howard George Stirrup. He's participated in multiple debates with atheist YouTubers to present new information to their audiences. And now he's looking to share information and conversations online as well as face-to-face on a weekly market stall for people with interest in seeing evidence of intelligent design and potential misconceptions. Howard, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Meghan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to share you and the things that you've learned. So you are not of our same faith tradition. I want to say that up front so that everyone understands that we're going to be getting a different perspective today. And I think there's so much value in that. We do not have all the truth. We have so much to learn from other people who have different pieces of this pie. So can you tell us a little bit about your faith journey and where you stand currently?
Of course. I'm learning as I go along. I'm learning about different faith systems. I'm reading mainly the Bible, but I'm also reading different literature as well. About 10 years ago, I became a Freemason, and I remained a Freemason for about 3 years. I thought I was taking the spirituality without the dogma, but then after a while I felt like it might be more dogmatic than a usual church would have to interpret the book. So I left Freemasonry and I started promoting activism to raise awareness of what I believe are misconceptions in scientism, like a lot of the theories that are promoted as fact, like the Big Bang and evolution. And I found that doing charitable work and voluntary work fulfilled me. It made me feel like I was making up for some of my wrongs. So I've worked with different activists. I've printed off flyers in English and in Spanish, and I've handed them out in many of the countries that you mentioned. And I've seen atheists question their beliefs and admit that being a theist is quite logical, supposing that they get the same kind of results that I was claiming that they would if they did some of the experiments and made some of the primary observations that I was recommending. And you mentioned my friend Mike Wilkerson. He contacted me from seeing me do debates, and he told me about his open source investigation known as BIO-GEOLOGY. And just being able to show people that there is evidence, geological findings worldwide that support a worldwide flood and a supernatural event is just a blessing. It's so often where I'll be at a market stall showing people stones and getting them to question how they formed. And I've had people say prayers for me. I've had people in tears. I've been giving out flyers and talking about science and getting people to really have eureka moments. And it's just a real gift to be able to inspire people to question what they've been taught to believe as truth, and to just keep an open mind to there being a creator and intelligent design when there is so much evidence of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't got a said religion, but I have found the label theist I'm happy with. I wouldn't say young earth creationist, but I'd like to say young humanity creationist. I'm not sure how old Earth is, but I believe that humanity didn't evolve. I believe we were created. I'm quite sure that there's a lot more truth in the Bible, and that the Bible should be taken a lot more literally
Mm-hmm.
than a lot of academics would have us believe, and even religious scholars. I've even been not just debating, but having conversations with Muslims about how they should maybe take certain verses in the Quran more literal and not
Mm-hmm.
just try and bend it to mean what the Big Bang or evolution wants it to mean. So
Mm-hmm.
it's been an interesting 6 or 7 years. And apart from my friend Mike Wilkerson approaching me with the BIO-GEOLOGY research, which I'd love to come back and talk to you and show you evidence about another time, tonight I'm very honoured. I've got the pleasure to present my friend's mathematical findings, which he is certain were divinely inspired, because he's always been into math. He's always been chasing patterns and trying to calculate problems. But he asked for evidence of intelligent design, and he's come to some conclusions that I just don't believe you could get to on your own.
Hmm. Well, we certainly believe in the principle of revelation from God. And so I'm excited to hear these inspired findings. There's so much of what you have shared that really resonates with me. The idea that there is a God, and that is a God of order, and that he uses patterns. Patterns, I think, are a language of God, and they are evidence for God. And they're also something that we lean on to discern what is true and what is not true, right? It's that once you can identify the pattern, you can then go and say, okay, this thing that I'm experiencing or learning or hearing, does this fit the patterns that God has given? Or is this something that might be coming from a different place? That is such an important procedure for us all to go through. And we certainly believe that all things testify that there is a God. You can't run away from it as much as we all would like to try sometimes, because we feel convicted, and you can't hide from God, right? So
Yeah,
please go on. Please share with us what you would like to teach us today.
awesome. So, like I say, I'm not the person that came to these discoveries. I'm just gift of the gab. So my friend has asked me to share this. He doesn't want to be named. He prefers all glory to go to God.
Mm,
And he just knows that I'm good at sharing information online and face to face. So I've
mhm,
helped make flyers, videos, and I'm doing these talks to the best of my abilities. So let's see if I can share my screen. There it is, share screen. And I've made 2 little videos.
mm,
One's about 7 minutes long, and the other one's about 10. I thought I'll make them in 2 different files just in case you have any questions in between. So, as Galileo Galilei said, mathematics is the language with which God wrote the universe. So, I'd like to focus on some of the patterns we can find in pi, the sequence, the phi sequence, the number e, and fractals, snowflakes, and all sorts of things we see in nature. And our vision's limited to just 7 colors, so it's hard for us to imagine what is outside of the electromagnetic spectrum that we can't see, and higher dimensions. But we can see, thanks to microscopes, that not only do we see doubling in mathematics, we see doubling in nature, the formation of a cell, for example. And in flowers, we see spiral patterns, which are known as the golden ratio. We see in Romanesco broccoli, and we also see in a number sequence known as the Fibonacci. And we also see fractals thanks to computer-generated imagery known as the Mandelbrot set, where we get infinite fractal designs that you can zoom in or out of. And thanks to slow cameras and again microscopes, we can see the fractal patterns in snowflakes because they're all individually frozen in a perfect state. When we look at the number sequence of pi, it might not be random, even though it's a rational number, infinite, because there's actually lots and lots of signs which we believe are from God, showing us that the zeros might be positioned in specific orders and positions with specific sums and values. The first 0 being in the 33rd position, which also happens to be the year that Jesus was crucified. We can look at mathematic calculators before the digital calculator, which was used for doubling, where if we add 1 to 1, it's 2, 2 to 2 is 4, 4 to 4 is 8, 8 to 8 is 16. Well, 16, when added together, is 7. So you go to 7, and 16 plus 16 is 32, which is 3 plus 2, which is 5. So we can see that there's ways to add things up with simple drawings, and they look like the figure 8, the infinity sign, which go around infinitely, and you never ever need to use the digits 3, 6, or 9. Always reduces back down to 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5. So it looks like 3, 6, and 9 have special qualities, as if they were designed with a higher purpose than the basic doubling. We can also go around the clock face clockwise and see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1 and 0 being 1, 11, 1 plus 1 being 2. So we can also use a calculator for this vortex math in the same way. But we must never worship the numbers or the qualities that come with numbers, but try and look at this whole creation as a whole, that there is an external creator outside of space and time. But what I'd like to show people today is with the multiplication results, when we do the multiplication table that we remember from elementary school, we can reduce these numbers to what we call the digital root and choose one number like number 1 and give it a color. And we can use mirrors like in a kaleidoscope to see more dimensions, to see the whole image, to see the projection into a 2-dimensional plane. So if we mirror these results from the mathematic table around so that we have a full 2-dimensional picture, like in a kaleidoscope, we will then recognize that number 1, the results that equal 1 when reduced, actually give a pattern. And the result number 2 give a different pattern when we choose a different color. 3 is a bit more advanced. It looks like a flower. And number 4 gives us a bit of a cross with a square going around it. So we're not just getting random results. It looks like there's a pattern, funny enough, similar to patterns we see in nature. So if we multiply more than 10 by 10, say if we go 30 by 30, we can see that number 5, when 10 by 10, gives a lovely simple design. And when we look at 30 by 30, we see that this design echoes onwards. So this is definitely not distortion or chance. we're looking at what I believe we could class as quantum physics, a simple version of the quantities behind the physicalities of nature. 6, again, when we see from far, 30 by 30, shows quite a complex pattern. 7, also, especially when seen from far, it shows like circles in a pond when you throw a stone in, concentric circles. So these patterns are very, very precise, and they're accurate, if you want to use another definition. They seem to have purpose. They don't seem to just be random. No number gives the same pattern, and number 9 of all numbers gives a kind of net pattern, especially when we see 9 from a distance. We see it doesn't just echo on like the others, it actually continues to be a net. And 3, 6, and 9, like we saw with the vortex mathematic calculator and with quotes from Nikola Tesla, also have a higher functionality. We see that they interact with 9, especially when you look at them as one color, as a cage. So it gives more of a 3D visualization to these images. But all of the numbers, if we look at 8, 4, and 6, they work together in harmony, and they can make different patterns. This is my birthday, 1983, as you mentioned. They give beautiful patterns which make you wonder if video games have been inspired by these on a subconscious level. Well, guess what? If we take the division table results and reduce their numbers, which tend to be a lot more complicated, but we've left a little reminder there to show people how to reduce the numbers when there's a decimal place, we get 2 different results. We get a line, which we could call number 1, because every number when divided by itself equals 1. But we get one result on the left side of the 1 line and one result on the right side of the 1 line. So we can see that if we just focused on mirroring the one pattern on the left, we get 1 flower. And when we mirror the results from the right side, we get another flower. And if I just put them all next to each other, when we look at the image on the left, that's the 2 flowers. Again, this can be calculated by 20 by 20, 30 by divided by 30, and so on. And the pattern just grows. Unlike multiplication echoing on forever, the division seems to change the more you multiply. So just like we saw in the sequence of pi, not having random chance, but actually having pattern signs within the sequence of pi, it looks like there's patterns in the results of multiplication and patterns in the results from division. Because when we do different things with the results, like add the results together or use both or use the same position that one number's been in, we keep finding different patterns, but we always find this law, there's this design where 9, even in division, looks like a net again, and 3, 6, and 9, just like in multiplication, appear to be a cage, but a different type of cage with the division results, as if we're looking at lower dimensions in this quantity of looking at the quantities of this physicality. And when we look at the 7th stage, the 5th stage of all numbers, they also have an arrow pointing to the center. So looking at these different results in the different stages, we can even start to see what could be pareidolia: faces, arms, eyes, mouths. If you look at the top of this screen, it looks like a dog face with ears flopping over. Now, some of this could be pareidolia, but could it be that I'm looking at a one-eyed monster in the top of the screen, middle of the screen, and then the lower part of the middle of the screen, what looks like to be a 2-eyed flying alien? And I know it sounds a bit far-fetched, but what are we looking at here? Could it be that board games and video games have somehow been inspired from this other dimension, whether it be inner space or just the fabric of our reality. When we see the movie The Matrix, it looks like there's numbers behind everything. So if we're made in God's image, and this is God's imagination, what a lot of people call a simulation theory, well, then God is the designer, God is the programmer behind this intelligent design. And maybe that's why a lot of these mandala pictures that we see in carpets, that we see in tiled floors from ancient civilizations, like we looked at video and board games and kaleidoscopes. Maybe a lot of these mandalas that show us different patterns coming from a center point are all inspired by the same source code of truth, which we would class as intelligent design.
Wow. That's incredible. I love this. So I am not mathematical. I'm not. I think when you reached out to me, I was like, I don't know what you just said, but that sounds great and I'd love to share it. But yeah, seeing it, the images are really helpful. So if you're not watching on YouTube, I actually recommend that you watch on YouTube because that will help this all make a lot more sense. But wow, that is so incredibly beautiful. So
I'm
my
glad you like
question,
it. Can I just
yeah.
say quickly, I love how you just said about, I never considered myself a natural mathematician. I just recognized at a young age that 9 times one times 9, 2 times 9, 3 times 9. I realized that, oh, you just knock one digit off the last and
Right.
just add a digit. And I was like, okay, so it's 9, 18, 27. And I saw a pattern. So I realized there was something in math that I liked, when I
Totally.
could find a trick or a hint or
Mhm.
you know, a cheat code.
Right.
Now, if I'd been shown that there are beautiful floral patterns, crosses, squares, circles,
Mhm.
I would have taken the mathematic multiplication uh, exercises and the
Mhm.
division exercises, and I would have had more interest in getting those
Mhm.
results to see what kind of pattern they
Right.
produce.
Right.
So I'm confused. How is it that my friend came across this and nobody in the
None of us
history of
did.
time has figured this out? I feel like this should be part of basic education.
Mm.
Kids
Mm.
would find mathematics way more interesting if they
Mhm.
could see beauty in these digits like we've
Unapplicable.
just looked at.
Yeah. I have theories about that. I mean, I think that when you show this, I mean, the purpose behind you showing it is to inspire faith, right? It's to inspire belief in God. And it does. How can it not? And so they're not going to teach it in school. They don't want to teach that in school because then kids will have that, that'll grow up in them and that will bring forth fruit eventually, and it's not the kind of fruit they want. And so but at the same time, yeah, so beautiful. And I think um what it testifies of. Well, I want to ask you. So when your friend found this beautiful pattern and illustrated it and articulated it to you, what did that do for your faith in God?
It made me feel, I think they're called synchronicities. And to me, it was just another synchronicity. Like when my friend Mike Wilkerson approached me with the BIO-GEOLOGY, and I was like, this is awesome. Because I don't like promoting conspiracy theories,
Mm,
but I do believe there is a conspiracy theory, just like you said, to turn people away from worshiping the creator, to
mm,
to to hide evidence of intelligent design. So when I found biogeology, it was like, yes, some actual physical
mm.
evidence that's reproducible worldwide. Everyone can get involved. Yes. So it was like amazing confirmation that I'm on the right path, because
Mhm.
I've been given a gift that I am willing to use. So then a year and a half later, when my friend approaches me, he literally came to Spain to show it to me, because he's like, I don't know who else to show this to. I've shown some people on YouTube and no one seems to be interested. You're my last hope. And he showed me, and I was just like, wow. I said, my head's hurting from parts of my brain being activated that
Right.
just don't normally get
Mm-hmm.
like this, turned on like this. And he's like, do you want me to stop? I said, no, I want you to keep going. And then he showed me this next part that I'm going to show you in a minute. And I'm taking notes, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, my brain's hurting, but in a good way. I said, it's
Right.
like going to the gym and having that muscle pain the day after, but knowing that that muscle pain serves for a good purpose, and that you burnt off some toxins and you've got some muscle fibers that are going to grow back stronger. So it's like one of them good pains. And I was like, that's the best way I can explain this. My brain's hurting in a good way. I said, so that tells me that I'm supposed to know this information. We're all supposed to know this information. People can still interpret it and argue it, but to me, it's getting like very difficult to ignore design when you can see flowers in results from numbers. It's hard enough to explain why we can see doubling and the golden ratio in flowers and pineapples and pine cones, but people can argue anything. But to me, this is like a really good tool, a really, really good tool. And again, it was just like another confirmation from my own personal journey that I'm doing the right thing, to have turned my life around, and to have been putting my face out there and saying, hey, I'll debate you, even though I'm not a professional
Right.
interlocutor. Hey, I'll debate you, even though I'm not so well versed in scripture, or so well versed in geology, or so, genius thinking mathematics. I'm taking on topics that I'm not an expert in, but I'm getting these confirmations because I need them. I
Right.
need as much help as I can get.
Oh,
So
that's so
for
beautiful.
so for me to get these gifts off these people and say, right, now you've got some real ammunition to, not that I want to debate, I actually don't like debating, but I feel like sometimes we need to plant seeds where
Yes.
they're desperately needed. And
Yes.
sometimes it might come with ridicule, even slander. We might get our sanity or intelligence completely put on the, on show and ridiculed, like I say. But afterwards you think, no, I've done the right thing. I've got this information out to a crowd that would never have found it from their own inquiry.
Right.
I've had to go up and take the heat
Yeah.
to put the information on the table so that this audience can bear witness. And a lot of the times it's not up to me to wake people up. I'm just there to plant seeds, share the information, and it's between them and God. When they open their hearts and become humble, God will give them eyes to see. And there's a lot of information out there. I can only be happy to be a messenger of some of that. And that's why I like to remind everyone, I'm not the mathematician genius. I'm not the geological genius. I'm not a natural scientist wonder, but I believe we're all scientists. We've all got common senses. We should all be using them. The Bible says we should trust no man and test all things. And that's what I like to stand by, stuff that deserves to be a cliche because it makes sense.
Oh gosh, Howard, I can't tell you how much what you just said is going to resonate with this audience.
Awesome.
Because I think so many of us feel the same way, that we are here to give invitations. And whether or not someone accepts our invitation, as you said, is between them and God, but our ministry is to give invitations. And so I see you and I appreciate you serving in your ministry to do the same. Thank you for
Thank
that.
you. Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
we're ready. What comes next?
Okay, here's the big one. This is absolutely awesome what I'm going to show you now. Because like I mentioned, the golden ratio before is 1.618. It's an amazing number. We see it in pineapples, pine cones, sunflowers. It doesn't just so happen to be how things grow. It happens to be the best rate of proportionality. So for things to not grow over themselves, for things not to, to throw seeds out and land in the same place, there is no better rate of proportionality mathematically than the rate of phi. So what I believe and many people believe to be God's fingerprint just so happens to be the best rate of proportionality that there could be. So I don't,
Coincidentally.
yeah,
Right.
coincidentally, it's like,
Sure.
so, if you want to believe in evolution, well, then evolution's finished because it made it. It finally got to the best rate of
It's
growth, the
perfect.
best, yeah, the
Yes.
perfect rate of distribution, the best rate of construction. In case I'm repeating myself, I just think people need to realize this. There are no fossils in the fossil record, which is up for debate on itself. There's no fossils that show any fossil with a different rate of construction. So
So we've been
evolution
evolving at
seemed
the
to get it
same
right a
speed.
long time ago.
Yeah, we've been
It's like,
evolving at the same speed the whole time.
and how can it be evolving if it found the perfect rate so long ago?
Right.
So, it's just one of them
Yeah.
little debate things
Oh,
that I
that's
thought I'd throw in
beautiful.
there.
Oh, I love that. That's good.
Right, so I found my video. Let's just make it full screen. You can see that, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so looking at this picture again, we can see that the golden ratio is known as the golden rectangle. It's known as the golden spiral. And when we see the spiral growing, it grows in quarter circles. Each rectangle is made with a new square, and that square contains a perfect quarter of a circle. And we know that circles are like cycles in a clock or in a zodiac wheel. There's a cycle of life. And quarters are interesting because we have 4 quarters in a month. There's 28 days in a month. Every 28 days we get a new moon, and every season we have spring, summer, autumn, winter. We have 4 seasons in a year. So it looks like there is a reason why there's quarters and corners to this world. So I've just hit play. Yeah, brilliant. So yes, we're looking at circles and squares. We see them in nature. And it looks like a lot of secret societies are also obsessed with circles and squares. The Bible talks about Earth as if it's a square or a cube having 4 corners in Revelation 7 verse 1. But the Bible also describes the heavens as if the heavens are a circle or a tent in Isaiah 40 verse 22. Well, when we look at physical things, we can understand they're rational, they're easy to divide like a square, where the circle is irrational, it's infinite, like the heavens, metaphysical. Geometry means to measure the earth. And like I said, throughout history, we see that secret societies and people that worship the creator recognize that squares and circles are part of our makeup. The compass does the circle and the square does the right angles. So it shows that the physical and the spiritual merge. And when we look at the golden ratio, we see that the numbers that come out of the Fibonacci sequence are infinite, but we get a 24 infinite sequence when we reduce them to the digital root, like we were looking at before. 13 is 1 plus 3 is 4. 21 is 2 plus 1 is 3. Well, this seems coincidental, but as we saw before with the patterns and also with the calculations, there's definitely a function when we look at the digital root. So just like we get 24 hours in a day, we also get 60 seconds in a minute and 60 minutes in an hour. So when we find a second sequence hidden in the Fibonacci phi number sequence, which is also infinite, it might not be coincidental, especially when we see that this 60 number sequence has 4 zeros that are
Mm.
exactly 15 digits apart. So if
Mhm.
we wrap those 60 digits around a circle, like we would if it was a zodiac wheel or a clock, we find that not only have the zeros been divided to make a cross or 4 corners, but the fives are also perfectly distanced
Mm.
apart from the zeros and from each other, that give us a 12 segment on this circle, just like we would expect in the clock for the hours of the day and night, or the constellations
Mm.
plus the 13th. We also find when we square the circle and go in from outside that the 3.14 makes its appearance, which is the pi abbreviation. So just like we seem to have found a cog around the zeros as they have triple numbers around them, maybe coincidentally, we've also found what appears to be pi
Mm.
appearing in the top left corner. So if we make a cog or an arm like a clock, a world clock, um, or a world mechanism, mathematic model of the world, we find that if we reverse these cogs 180 degrees for the pi arm and 90 degrees for the zero arm, we now have lined up certain numbers so that there's more alignment. I've missed the step, I'd have to go back, but we can go on.
Mhm.
So we now take both cogs and reverse engineer back another step, and we find that the digits around the zeros have now got another matching digit. So the nines have now got double digits on each side of the zero. The threes are on each side of the zero, just like the ones and the sevens. So we seem to have found the next part of the mechanism, another arm. So we take these 3 arms or cogs and reverse engineer them another step, a quarter rotation, 90 degrees. And we now see that the numbers that were in some kind of harmony in the original position, if we imagine the numbers come in from one position and it's got like a hand, if you saw that image, which people take a screenshot of to understand me better, they seem to have an opposite number that worked with them. Well,
Mm.
now that we've had them in the position surrounding, we've found another cog. So with the 4th cog, we take one more position backwards, and we find that these numbers that we saw that worked in the original position appear to be working again, because they alternate from the top, from each side of what we call the pi arm. This might be a lot to follow, but it's something for people to watch over a few times and to look at the screenshots. But the mathematical proof is there that these numbers appear to be able to be redistributed, reconfigured. And when we do this, we keep finding what appears to be more cogs to this mechanism. So the only numbers that we haven't figured out are the fives. And
Mm.
we can see that the fives appear to be alternating, as one cog would have the fives in the forward position, if that makes sense, clockwise, while the other cog has all of the fives behind the neighbor number, as if you could understand, counterclockwise.
Mm.
So if we go off that sign, because that's all God gives us, signs, and we turn one cog a quarter counterclockwise, like the fives indicate, and the other cog clockwise, we find that all the numbers are in their original position, all grouped together. Now, that
Mm.
could be a coincidence, but it could also be that these cogs are part of our world clock, our world mechanism. The Bible talks about 6 days of creation and the 7th day of rest. Maybe what we count as the sixth stage is the present moment, how we see the phi, should I say, sequence as it is. And maybe the next step in that sequence is the day of rest, the end days. But whatever interpretation you want to take from all this, it's pretty obvious that phi has been made to work in harmony with pi by design, not by chance. And that when we see these signs in the heavens, be it star constellations or numbers and frequencies, maybe that's why we see that God's will be done in earth as it is in heaven, because we see things play out. And maybe Saturn is really Satan, and Venus, the morning and evening star, could be a manifestation into Lucifer. I'm not sure of any of these things, but it looks like numbers, frequencies, arches, and angles might have a lot more to do with what we're told as archangels. And maybe when we're told that different angels have got different hierarchy, not sound too new age, because I really don't want to come over as like I've got answers. These are all just questions that I'm throwing out there. When we read that the angels have got a hierarchy, an order system, where I believe the archangels at the top and the seraphim, the more reptilian angels are more lower down. Well, another school of thought, when I Google it, says that no, they're the top ones and the archangels are the bottom. And I'm just like, but it seems like there is order and value to the ranking of the angels. So I'm wondering if there is order and value to the structure of numbers. And maybe numbers are the quantum physics behind the material, the quantum entanglement, all these words that we use. There must be something so simple to all of it that if the numbers in the pi sequence have got value, if the zeros hold importance where they add up, the sum of the digits add up to numbers that have relevance, and that the ordering and the position, it's as if everything has meaning. Nothing is in its place by chance. Every single digit in every single number sequence has relevance. So maybe numbers themselves are somehow connected to what we understand as angels and stars and constellations, and maybe things are a lot more entwined, entangled, and it would be great for myself and more people to have a little bit better understanding of this, or at least be in awe of the beauty and majesty of this creation, and see that even numbers themselves aren't just inanimate conceptual objects, but they actually have relevance, importance, value, meaning, not just structure but signs, so that we can find guidance. Because if God speaks through his angels, and mathematics is the universal language that God wrote in, so I'm just like, I feel like I'm onto something, thanks to my friend finding all this information and giving it to me, and me having an open mind and a big mouth to just talk and that. So I'm just here sharing this, showing people that these are more questions than statements, but I'm seeing a lot of signs and a lot of reason for people to be investigating this, to be calculating these things, and to be teaching these things to children, and for schools to make math a little bit more colorful and show that what we call irrational infinite number sequences, if there's pattern in the pi sequence, if there's pattern in the Fibonacci sequence from the phi golden ratio, then that shows, to kind of sum it all up, that there is a designer so intelligent that must be out of what we call space and time.
Mhm.
Because if you can design an infinite number, well, you've got to be outside of space and time. If you can show me pattern in a number that's supposed to be infinite and random, well, then it's not random. And if it's infinite, then that kind of blows my brain
Mhm.
cells, because how can a designer have designed something that hasn't ended yet,
Mm.
that hasn't got an ending? Well, then it must be the alpha and the omega. It
Yeah.
must be outside of space and time, before the beginning and the end. It's just blatantly obvious to me. If an
Mm.
infinite number that we call irrational, because we can't divide it, shows pattern, then that tells me maybe it's not so irrational to the
Mm.
one that designed it in the first place.
Amen. Man, that is so cool.
Mhm.
This is all so cool. I love this. I love this discussion of sacred geometry because it's so real. Like it is so real that there is a pattern in these things and there is evidence of the hand of God and all these things. And I wish too, I wish that we taught it like this in school, because everyone jokes, right? Everyone jokes. Math, I'm never going to use math. I'll use addition and subtraction and maybe sometimes multiplication, but I'm never going to use math. And you just show that math is so much more than just a mechanism that is applicable to some jobs. Like this is the building blocks of creation.
Yeah,
And if there is a God and if we are related to God, then we should be creators, and we need to understand these things to help us, I think, in that manifestation of that divinity that is inside of us. I love the explanation of the spiral of that Fibonacci. Did I say that correct? The
yeah,
Fibonacci sequence. Because a lot of what we talk about on this channel is a pattern of ascension, a pattern of eternal progression that we believe God is involved in and that we believe we are involved in, although at a different level, right? Like we're the one squares, not the not the 18 square or 16 square, or the 8 square, I think is the one that was shown there. So I think that there is something to be said about all of this as we consider not just the fact that this is evidence that there is a God, because it is, but also the fact that this can teach us something about God, that God is in these infinite realms of eternal progression in both directions, right? Because you showed the division too. You showed that it
yeah,
was eternally getting smaller in this pattern and eternally larger at the same time. And I think there's so much that we can learn about God and about ourselves from that.
yeah,
And as we try to fit the pattern, right? We are not a flower. We have a little bit more say in what we get to become, and we have influences. We were talking before this about the reality of a devil, and that plays into our lives, and we are the ones who have to decide who is going to be my God. Am I going to have this infinite intelligent God who is so good and cares so much about beauty and puts his fingerprints everywhere to teach us about him and about ourselves? Or am I going to worship this devil who is a God of lies, right? Like we get to go through that conflict. So this is so beautiful, so
it really
incredible.
is. It really is. And it's just another observation that it's like phi is the golden ratio. So it's as if like God gave us a fingerprint of his design, it's like the blueprint of his design. And then when we look at pi, we don't see that many things in nature that are perfect circles. Maybe just the sun and bubbles. There's not that many things that are perfect circles. So we look at the perfect life cycle of Jesus Christ, that only the Creator could live a perfect life without sin. And then I think, so maybe the signature for a perfect life cycle, the Son of God being the perfect circle we see in the sky, that does, it's like cycles, and it just makes me think that maybe there's something to it, and that's why the first zero appears in the 33rd position,
Mm.
because it's just another sign that if the creator was going to manifest in the flesh and live
Mm.
a perfect life cycle, there's another hint that he lived 33 years, and that's all he needs to live a
Mhm.
perfect life cycle and achieve
Mhm.
everything. So it's just all beautiful little hints and signs and
Yeah.
confirmations and synchronicities to inspire us to learn math, to inspire us to use our senses, to inspire us to have conversations and internal
Mhm.
dialogue, ask for guidance,
Mhm.
talk to others. It's like it's a beautiful time to be living, to
Mm.
come across information and just become skeptical about the
Mhm.
sciences and then yeah, even if people might call me a conspiracy theorist, it tells me a lot that if throughout history the devil could be as simple as an energy, maybe not a physical being, if not an energy that lives in all of our egos
Mm.
and will cause us to ignore evidence and to even cover information up throughout history to to cause atheism and these theories to thrive because in some strange psychopathy way they believe that the evolution of man
Mm.
can to be as gods. It's
Mhm.
that energy that's in that ego of
Mhm.
most men that we can do better if we
Mhm.
don't follow the laws and the rules of some
Mhm.
book or some god. Even if they believe there is a god, they go as far as to deny it and to hide the evidence of God
Mhm.
because they believe that man can do better.
Yes.
And I feel that that's more and more what the devil is kind of taking form in my mind, that the devil is
Mm.
part of the makeup of this world.
Mm.
He's the
Mhm.
god of this world.
Mhm.
So I believe that there is an electromagnetic reality to the devil, and that as we're electromagnetic, we're affected by these
Mhm.
frequencies, these
Mhm.
energies, and to not get too lost with this, just like we can see pi as a perfect circle, and the only way a perfect circle could ever be formed or a perfect light cycle is something outside of space and time
Mhm.
having the processing power to make such a number
Mhm.
and such a perfect design in the golden ratio. Well, the last thing I'd like to add to this uh, conversation, the last gift I can share is that my friend was also looking into the E number. I think it's called Euler's number. It's another irrational number. And this shows one or two things that don't appear in the pi number. Like there's a sum, I think it's either 777 or 555, which doesn't appear when you add up all the digits of pi, yet 111, 222, 333, all of these other numbers appear, but 555 don't. It appears in E.
Mm.
And also, E is another irregular, irrational number that businessmen use to calculate profit margins.
Mm.
So when we think that money is the root of all evil,
Mm.
if there was a signature of the devil in number, I would tell your audience to look out for E because
Mm.
it's not a perfect circle. It's not a beautiful rate of construction or distribution. It's only good for calculating
Money.
profits.
Wow. Interesting.
So that is something
It's
that I've
fascinating.
come across and that my friend says there's something dodgy about E. And
Mm.
he's like, I don't want to investigate it anymore. He says, I feel like I know enough about E
Mm.
to not want to learn
That's
about it because
interesting.
maybe with great power comes great responsibilities, and that's why
Mm.
people use it for business. What you said before about the multiplication and division, the results of multiplication echo on forever
Mhm.
in the exact same direction. So there's like
Mhm.
this a constant. So in the
Mm.
higher realms, there's a law of constant, like an angel can't break the law. Where in the lower dimensions, the division results, maybe because there's two sides to every story of the one line or something. There's where we see things changing and evolve. Just like a split personality can sin in different ways, maybe there's something to how the lower realms of this fabric of reality can show so much variation. And then maybe what could be a never-ending story, because the more you calculate, the more of the picture you'll get. Now, with the multiplication, it doesn't matter how much you calculate, the pattern will never change. It will continuously grow out the same way. So I just thought, yeah, with the multiplication and division, it seems like higher realms, lower dimensions, maybe sin, Latin means without or to take away,
right.
like in
Without.
mathematics, sin.
I had a thought. I don't know if this is a smart thought, but that ties back to what you're saying about E and about how you see the pattern of 555 and 777. Well, that's kind of odd because 7 is a number of perfection, right? Like that is symbolic of perfection. But what's between 5 and 7? 6.
Yeah.
It's in the absence of the number that E kind of shows its hand.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
I have no idea, but that just came to mind.
Well, I definitely recommend to yourself and to your audience, if they found the presentations interesting, take a screenshot of all of the information of the pi sequence, because there's one image where it shows the digits and they're all color, the zeros are all red and the nines are all blue and all that. But the next image just gives a list of some of the coincidences in the pi sequence. Because as well as looking at those images that look like flowers and crosses and squares and circles, there's something therapeutic when you look at these images that are derived from multiplication and division. It's as if on a subconscious level, they're therapeutic because you're looking at maybe a language in its geometric form. Because mathematics is a language. There's mathematics behind Hebrew, there's mathematics behind Arabic. And if people study geometry and numerology, there's numbers behind, there's mathematics behind every language. But of course there is sin in the knowledge tree of knowledge, so I don't recommend studying everything. I'm just saying that it seems like on a subconscious level there is beauty in flower geometry, in snowflake geometry. So I'm seeing the geometry in number, and I feel that that is therapeutic on a subconscious way. It's maybe how marketing companies decided to use a green cross for the chemist, for the pharmacy logo, because maybe someone had inside knowledge that, I think it was digit 4, shows like a pharmacy cross. And maybe some of the video game characters from the Super Mario Brothers or the board games from the past that look like mandalas or pointing to center points, whether they were aware or not, I've got a firm belief that there's more of a subliminal attraction when we're in harmony with these images, these geometric patterns. And just to say lastly, there is a beautiful scientific experiment called cymatics, where people can put sand on a metal sheet and put a speaker underneath and get geometric patterns to appear, the right frequencies. And it looks like when Beethoven and Mozart were tuning their orchestras to 432 hertz A tuning, they got a much better result with plants growing to that tuning than if we put heavy metal on, which is now tuned to 440 hertz A tuning. So we can see in plants a better result with the tuning from Mozart and Beethoven's times. We can see, thanks to cymatics patterns with sand or water, a better clarity, a more defined geometric pattern when we have the right frequencies. So back to my point with dolphins, scientists are now able to generate cymatic patterns when they record dolphins speaking underwater. And thanks to the geometric patterns, studying with mathematics and geometric patterns, angles and arches and numbers, they're deciphering what dolphins are saying. So we're living in a very, very interesting time where all of this kind of information, like quantum computers, quantum theories, what we might be looking at as quantum mechanics, the kind of physicality of this world, this could all be very interesting in helping us understand nature, ourselves, and the creator much better. And just for the last point, we know that computers are programmed with zeros and ones, yet we can see nature's programmed with zeros to nines. So technology's still got a long way to come.
Amen. Wow, that was so beautiful. Thank you so much, Howard. Thank you for your ministry and for your personal journey and for this beautiful testimony of God that you've shared with us today. I so appreciate it.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and much more lighthearted than going against some atheist in a debate where I've really got to think fast and try and, sound clever. It's so much more relaxed and it flows. And I probably said too much and repeated myself, but I've had a great time.
Thank you.
So thank you for your hospitality.
Thank you so much.
Are you just reading the scriptures, or have you learned to search them? If you haven't switched to using scripture notes, you haven't discovered the power of a tool designed for searching the scriptures. This incredible tool allows you to pull together search results from the standard works, apocryphal texts, and freedom documents into a collection you can study from, digging deeper with instant references to Blue Letter Bible, the LDS Citation Index, Webster's 1828 Dictionary, and more. You can even import your gospel library notes as well. Sign up now for a free trial at scripturenotes.com.